Once again, geographers, welcome back to part 4 of our guided notes. We left off talking about the Taj Mahal on slide 36. Again, the Taj Mahal is located in India in the city of Agra, which was once the capital city of the Mughal Empire. It's actually a really romantic story. The Taj Mahal, seen up top here, was built from 1632 and 1647 by the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan in dedication to his favorite wife, Mumtaz Mahal, who died in childbirth. This is a mausoleum, so he built this to bury her in, and he is buried beside her. Below, another cultural spot in India is the Statue of Unity. This is the world's tallest statue. It's dedicated to one of the most prominent leaders in the Indian independence movement, and India's first deputy prime minister. India's independence movement from Britain as an independent nation and no longer a British colony also happened in relative recent history. The statue is built in his birthplace. This leader of this independence movement, Patel, and the deputy prime minister in Gujarat, India. A fun fact, this statue is nearly 4 times the size of the Statue of Liberty. It's almost 600 feet tall. We'll continue on our eastward journey this way until Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia consists of 15 different countries and territories. The climate in this region is tropical, and it is the only region in Asia in both the northern and southern hemispheres. If you're the kind of person who benefits from seeing latitude and longitude lines and reminding yourself of where the equator is, go ahead and draw a line. Oh, maybe not. Here we go. Draw a line right here. Remember that the equator splits the world in half in between the the northern and southern hemispheres. So here's our equator right here. Notice how above, part of Southeast Asia is in the northern hemisphere, but also down here, part of Southeast Asia is in the southern hemisphere. Southeast Asia is characterized by many islands and archipelagos. And I have a really difficult time saying that word, archipelago. An archipelago is a chain of islands. So Indonesia, and let's take a look really quickly back at this map. Indonesia is a chain of islands. This country in orange is a chain of different islands. This region experiences a lot of volcanoes, earthquakes, and tsunamis as a result of tectonic plate activity. All right, we talked about earlier in the year the Ring of Fire being particularly around the Pacific plate here. There's a smaller plate over here where we see particularly the islands of Southeast Asia were formed. We have a variety of natural resources in Southeast Asia, including rice. Rice is grown in this region and is a food staple for the entire continent of Asia. This image here is of a rice field in Bali, Indonesia. Indonesia and Philippines are also 2 of the world's largest fish producers. We find forest and timber, again wood, particularly in Indonesia and Malaysia. Tropical fruits like mango, papaya, and pineapple. Pineapple especially is found in Thailand and the Philippines. And historically, this region was important to global trade because of spices, which is why we saw a lot of imperialism in this region. I mentioned briefly India's independence movement from Great Britain. Another country in this region, Singapore, was a British colony, and then a lot of these countries were colonized or used as territories by other big countries. For example, the Philippines was for some time a United States territory. So we'll finish Southeast Asia with our cultural spotlight. The first is the Gardens by the Bay in Singapore, pictured above. This is an urban park. Singapore is one of the world's smallest countries. It's really just the city itself is the whole country. So this is an urban park that is designed to be environmentally sustainable. So these man-made super trees in the picture have solar cells that capture light, energy, and power their nightly light and music shows. And I would recommend, if you search that on YouTube, it's really kind of cool to see, and I've seen it in person, and it's obviously amazing to see in person. The second one is a more historic site. This is Angkor Wat in Cambodia. This is another one of those UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Angkor Wat itself is a Buddhist temple complex. It's the largest religious monument in the world. Buddhism being one of the main religions that we find, one of the several main religions we find in this region. All right, finally, we will finish in East Asia here. East Asia includes 8 countries and territories: Mongolia, China, which is formally, or again officially, the People's Republic of China, Macau, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Taiwan, again, which is formally or officially the Republic of China, which is different from the People's Republic of China, Japan, South Korea, and North Korea. Macau and Hong Kong are not independent countries themselves. They are both technically territories of China. You might have heard in the last year especially, there have been protests against Chinese rule in Hong Kong, and it's made global news. So you might have heard about that actually. All right. This region is the second most populated region in Asia behind South Asia. China as a country, right? So China as a single country is more populated than India, with over 1,300,000 people in China alone. The population distribution of China is very uneven. 95% of the population lives in less than half of the country's area. So here's the country's total landmass. 95% of the country lives on this side of this line here, on less than half of the land's landmass. Notice, in particular, how dense the population is, where, again, we see the darker colors around the yellow and Yangtze rivers. Throughout this entire region of East Asia, we also see population being very centered in urban areas, like Beijing and Shanghai in China, in Hong Kong, or in Tokyo, Japan. East Asia covers a large area, so there are a variety of different climates and landforms. Like Indonesia, Japan is a large archipelago. Archipelago? That sounds better. Archipelago. We talked about the Eurasian steppe being in Central Asia, but it stretches, if you'll recall from that original map, all the way into Mongolia. So people in Mongolia are traditionally nomadic. The yurt is a traditional Mongolian dwelling. Japan also, circling back here, is located on the Ring of Fire. if we go back and take a look, and you don't have to do that, you can follow along with me, but here we see on the Ring of Fire, here's Japan right on that border of the Pacific Plate. So we see that it was formed by volcanoes and is a center for volcanic and earthquake activity, much like this area in Southeast Asia. This would be the island chain of Japan right here. Right. We are on question 46. Just to remind yourself, you're welcome to go back and look in these notes. What type of landform is a steppe? You may also pause this video if you would like more time to answer that. Your options are plateau, desert, or grassland. And we'll join and we'll start with slide 47 when you are finished answering that question. So, East Asia has a variety of resources and economies. Now, when we talk about economies, we're talking just basically about how people make money. How does the country make money? The resources that people in China have available to them are water. Again, so we see farmland and agriculture and irrigation being used in the floodplains of the Yellow and Yangtze rivers. Again, forests and timber, primarily in China. China and Japan are also two of the world's largest fish producers. And we'll talk a little more about minerals, China being the world's largest producer of minerals like aluminum, gold, tin, and coal. So when we talk about economies, East Asia has some of the fastest growing and dominant economies in the world. China, with that large of a population, has a really large workforce. And having that much workforce, that many people working to buy and sell goods, or when we talk about economies, we're talking about the way money exchanges, and that's a lot of people working and producing goods that then are sold and money's being exchanged. So China now has one of the largest economies in the world. Japan and Hong Kong in particular have large technology and financial based economies. So banking, for example, an economy that runs on banking. We would see that more in Hong Kong, and a technology economy more in Japan. Now, we mentioned in South Asia how certain countries are looking to use hydroelectric energy. So like some of those governments, China utilizes, they actually do use hydroelectric power for electricity, and specifically for affordable electricity. The Three Gorges Dam in China is the world's largest hydroelectricity station. However, building this dam had devastating effects, things that should sound familiar. It created a reservoir when it blocked up the river that flooded, taking out hundreds of towns and villages and displacing 1.2 million people. It also wiped out factories, mines, and dumps, and all the waste and pollutants entered and contaminated the water. It also threatened the habitats of the wildlife. But look how big that dam is. All right, we'll end finally with our cultural spotlight on East Asia. The Great Wall of China is one of the new 7 wonders of the world as well. It's a series of barriers that were built by the ancient Chinese as a protection from the nomadic people in the steppe in what is current-day Mongolia. Pictured here up top. Now at the bottom, we have the Shinkansen train network in Japan. It was the world's first bullet train built in the 1960s, but actually the newest model just released can run during an earthquake and runs at over 220 miles an hour. one of these technological advancements that we see in Japan's technology-based economy. And that's it.